If you've grown used to a dazzling Dubai through promotional footage where neon lights never go out and the chatter of the elite fills gold-plated halls, then the reality of 2026 may come as a shock. The luxurious corridors of Dubai Mall, once overflowing with tourists and luxury shoppers, now carry something deeply unsettling: silence. Instead of glowing storefronts displaying the newest collections, glass windows now reflect emptiness, closure notices, and dark abandoned interiors. And the disappearance of these luxury brands is not random. It is a warning signal. A signal that the economic machine sustaining Dubai's luxury retail empire is beginning to strain under pressure. Because when even the most powerful global brands quietly retreat from Dubai, something larger is happening underneath the surface. You probably remember the name West Elm. For years, it represented modern American aspiration, stylish furniture for professionals chasing the dream of sophisticated urban living. In Dubai, West Elm became especially popular among expatriates, building expensive lives inside skyscrapers overlooking the Gulf. But by July 2025, something changed. The flagship West Elm store inside Dubai Mall quietly went dark. No dramatic announcement, no emotional farewell. Only carefully written corporate statements designed to minimize panic. By Christmas 2025, the brand's entire presence across the UAE, Kuwait, and Riyadh had disappeared completely. And when discounts suddenly hit 80%, you realize this is no longer a seasonal sale. It is liquidation, a permanent exit from a market once believed to possess endless money. The real question is terrifying. How does a brand survive for 15 years, then collapse in only a few months? The answer may reveal something much bigger about Dubai itself. Because Dubai's retail economy was built around a very specific customer, the aspirational upper-middle-class expatriate, professionals from Europe, North America, and Asia who came to Dubai chasing tax-free salaries and glamorous lifestyles. But by 2025, living costs had exploded. Retail rents became almost irrational, and logistics costs surged aggressively. Suddenly, elegant furniture showrooms transformed from profitable assets into giant financial liabilities, consuming enormous space inside expensive malls. And when pressure reached franchise operators like the Al Shaya Group, they chose survival over loyalty. West Elm became one of the first casualties in a larger portfolio purge designed to preserve cash flow. The withdrawal was brutal. One day, the stores were operating normally. The next, employees were gone. No transition plan, no restructuring roadmap, just disappearance. And this may be the most dangerous part of all. Because systems once considered unbreakable are suddenly revealing fatal weaknesses. If a well-established international brand with strong backing and loyal customers cannot survive inside Dubai, how many others are quietly struggling behind polished glass walls? That question becomes even darker when you look at what happened next. Because perfection for children has always been one of the easiest products to sell to wealthy families. And in Dubai, few brands understood that better than Pottery Barn Kids. The brand didn't simply sell cribs or furniture, it sold a fantasy, a carefully packaged image of American-style luxury childhood. But by December 2025, the entire system collapsed. Stores once filled with pastel displays and polished interiors became dark, empty rooms haunted only by the outlines of removed logos. And for customers, the collapse created something worse than inconvenience. It destroyed trust. Imagine spending thousands designing your child's room around exclusive furniture collections, only to discover the company no longer exists locally. No replacement parts, no warranty, no technical support. The entire service ecosystem vanished overnight. This exposed a dangerous flaw in Dubai's franchise-heavy retail model. Many global brands operating in the Gulf are deeply dependent on regional partners. And when those partners face financial pressure, entire retail ecosystems collapse together. That is exactly what happened across the Williams-Sonoma portfolio. West Elm, Pottery Barn Kids, one after another, they disappeared. And beneath all of this lies a more uncomfortable truth Dubai may not want to confront. Consumer psychology is changing. People are no longer building permanent lives here with the same confidence as before. Long-term settlement confidence is weakening. Expensive furniture suddenly feels irrational when people increasingly prefer flexible living arrangements and short-term rentals. Comfort is being replaced by caution. And this transformation reaches far beyond furniture stores, because once customers stop emotionally investing in permanence, entire retail systems begin weakening together. The glossy malls still shine, the marble floors still sparkle, but underneath the glamour, the foundation is beginning to crack. If you once believed that some retail empires would survive forever simply because they had existed for centuries, then what happened inside Dubai's malls in 2026 may completely change your perspective. Imagine thousands of square meters once filled with shoppers, perfumes, luxury fashion, and glowing storefronts, now transformed into dark, silent caverns. This is no longer retail slowdown. This is visible collapse. One of the clearest examples was Debenhams. For decades, the brand represented stability, a place where generations bought everything from clothing to home essentials. Inside Dubai, Debenhams became one of the central anchors holding together massive mall ecosystems like Mall of the Emirates. But by late November 2025, the illusion finally broke. In an awkward moment witnessed across social media, the company's official account briefly announced a full withdrawal from the Middle East, and then hurriedly deleted the statement in confusion. Even management seemed unable to explain the collapse properly. And perhaps that confusion reflected something deeper, a system that had already lost control long before the public noticed. There is painful irony in Debenhams surviving physically in Dubai years after effectively dying in the United Kingdom back in 2021. In Britain, the brand became mostly digital. But in Dubai, franchise capital kept the corpse alive. For Gulf residents, Debenhams still felt familiar, reliable, predictable, like an old friend surviving inside a city obsessed with constant reinvention. But economically, the department store model had already become obsolete. Modern consumers no longer want gigantic retail spaces selling everything under one roof. Specialized stores and e-commerce platforms change behavior permanently, and maintaining enormous physical stores inside ultra-expensive malls became financially irrational. Dubai tried to ignore that reality longer than most cities, but eventually, mathematics wins. When revenue per square meter begins collapsing while operating costs continue rising, the system breaks. And when anchor tenants like Debenhams disappear, the damage spreads beyond one company. Because giant malls depend on anchor stores to generate foot traffic for surrounding businesses. Without them, entire mall ecosystems weaken together. Restaurants lose customers. Smaller stores lose visibility. Luxury boutiques lose spontaneous shoppers. The emptiness spreads quietly across entire corridors. And that raises a terrifying question. If even historic retail giants cannot survive inside Dubai's luxury malls, what happens to everyone else? The answer began appearing almost immediately. River Island followed. Then more mid-market fashion brands quietly began retreating. And this collapse revealed something deeply uncomfortable about Dubai's retail identity. It was never truly independent. Dubai's consumer economy depended heavily on imported Western shopping culture, imported brands, imported trends, imported tourists, imported spending behavior. And when economic problems hit Europe and the United Kingdom, the shockwaves traveled directly into Dubai. River Island had already been struggling badly in Britain long before its Dubai collapse. By 2025, the company had shut down dozens of stores in the UK following failed restructuring attempts, as British consumers reduced spending and shifted toward online shopping. Maintaining expensive overseas retail spaces became unbearable. Dubai suddenly transformed from a luxury oasis into an expensive liability, and this exposes a dangerous truth. Retail in Dubai survives largely through external momentum, not internal necessity. The city functions like a giant luxury display window connected directly to global capital flows. When international money moves confidently, Dubai shines brilliantly. But when fear spreads globally, the cracks appear immediately. And perhaps no brand revealed this vulnerability more dramatically than Gucci. Because Gucci is not just fashion, it is symbolism, a signal of wealth, permanence, and elite confidence. But in March 2026, even Gucci was forced into emergency closures inside Dubai Mall following rising regional instability. Luxury display cases, once designed perfectly to glorify wealth, suddenly stood empty beneath black coverings. Security barriers replaced excited shoppers. And this matters psychologically far more than people realize. Luxury stores in Dubai do not simply sell handbags or watches. They help maintain the illusion that everything remains stable, safe, prosperous, untouchable. When Gucci closes, that illusion breaks, and the financial numbers behind the scenes were already alarming. Kering, Gucci's parent company, had seen global revenue decline sharply while market value collapsed dramatically over recent years. Even before regional tensions escalated, the company had already been closing stores worldwide aggressively. Dubai was supposed to compensate for weakness in China and Europe. Instead, it became another risk zone. And suddenly the city that built its global image around luxury consumption faced a dangerous new reality. Luxury itself was losing psychological power. Because during instability, people stop displaying wealth publicly. They become cautious, defensive, practical. Even billionaires behave differently when uncertainty spreads. And that shift destroys the emotional engine powering ultra-luxury retail. No matter how beautiful the malls remain, they become empty shells without confidence. Dubai's malls were designed for a world obsessed with endless consumption. But 2026 is beginning to look very different from that world. And the ghost stores appearing behind luxury glass may be revealing something much larger than retail decline. They may be exposing the limits of an entire economic model built on permanent extravagance. In the modern business world, there are certain brands whose presence alone feels like a guarantee of stability. And when it comes to absolute stability, Few names carry more psychological power than Apple. That is why what happened in early 2026 sent shockwaves far beyond retail. Because when Apple disconnects from a market, investors pay attention. At the iconic Apple store overlooking the Dubai fountain inside Dubai Mall, customers suddenly encountered something completely unfamiliar. Closed entrances, security notices, dark interiors, and it didn't stop there. Locations inside Mall of the Emirates and Yas Mall also went dark in what appeared to be a coordinated emergency withdrawal. No dramatic press conference, no public panic, just silence. But that silence may have said more than any statement ever could. Because Apple is arguably one of the most resilient corporations on earth. A company valued above $3 trillion. A brand that usually continues operating even during periods of instability most businesses cannot survive. Historically, Apple only closes stores under extreme circumstances. Pandemics, major riots, wars, situations where physical safety and logistics become impossible to guarantee, which means this decision carried enormous psychological consequences. Because Apple functions like a global safety certificate for investors. It stores signal confidence, order, predictability, and once that signal disappears, fear spreads quickly. Imagine driving a luxury car down a perfectly smooth highway, only to suddenly discover every gas station ahead has closed. That's what this felt like for multinational corporations operating in Dubai. If Apple no longer feels secure, who does? For years, Dubai carefully built an image as a safe oasis, separated from regional instability, a protected bubble of luxury and international business. But in 2026, that illusion began cracking visibly. And for the Western expatriate community living inside Dubai, the impact felt surprisingly personal. Because Apple products are not simply electronics, they are deeply integrated into modern professional life. MacBooks for business, iPhones for communication, Apple Care for reliability, entire lifestyles built around seamless convenience. When official support systems disappear suddenly, people begin feeling abandoned, uncertain, and uncertainty changes behavior quickly. Some skilled professionals quietly began reconsidering whether Dubai still represented long-term stability for their careers and families. That matters far more than most people realize, because expatriate professionals are the backbone of Dubai's modern service economy. Finance, technology, consulting, and media, luxury retail itself. And once confidence weakens among skilled foreign workers, entire economic sectors begin feeling pressure simultaneously. But Apple was not the only warning sign. Even mass-market brands started retreating aggressively, and that may actually be more dangerous. When a luxury brand struggles, some people still dismiss it as temporary elite behavior. But when affordable retailers begin collapsing too, the problem reaches the broader population. That is exactly what happened with H&M. By mid-2026, major H&M locations across Dubai Festival City and Mall of the Emirates had gone silent. Massive stores once packed with shoppers transformed into empty shells, filled with abandoned shelves and clearance signs. Official statements claimed the company was shifting toward digital focus, but everyone in retail understands what that phrase usually means: retreat. Because when logistics costs surge by nearly 30% and geopolitical uncertainty rises simultaneously, even low-cost fashion models begin breaking apart. And unlike luxury brands, H&M depends on volume, massive daily customer flow, high transaction frequency. Once middle-class purchasing power weakens, the business model collapses quickly. This raises an extremely uncomfortable question. What is happening to Dubai's middle class? For years, the city marketed itself as a paradise of endless upward mobility, a place where expatriates could earn, spend, upgrade lifestyles, and build futures. But by 2026, that optimism began fading. Living costs increased sharply. Housing became more expensive. Indirect taxes quietly expanded. Everyday expenses started squeezing disposable income. And suddenly, fast fashion became less important than financial survival. But the most painful consequence may not even be retail decline itself. It is employment. Because brands like H&M employ thousands of migrant workers across logistics, retail operations, customer service, and supply chains. When stores close, entire livelihoods disappear instantly. For many South Asian workers supporting families abroad, the shutdown of a single store can mean the collapse of an entire household economy back home. And this creates a dangerous domino effect. Because once budget anchor tenants disappear from malls, foot traffic declines further. Restaurants lose customers, service businesses weaken. Mall ecosystems begin hollowing out from the inside. This is why the closure of seemingly ordinary stores matters so much. They are not isolated failures, they are stress fractures. Visible symptoms of a larger economic transformation. Dubai itself will not disappear. The skyscrapers will remain, the hotels will still shine, the malls will continue operating, but the identity behind them may already be changing, because the Dubai that emerged after 2026 appears increasingly different from the fantasy sold to the world for decades, less limitless, less invincible, and far more vulnerable to global instability than anyone once imagined. Although the lights inside stores like Louis Vuitton and Dior still shine brightly across Dubai's luxury malls, something far more important has already disappeared: the mindset of the customers themselves. From the outside, the illusion still survives. Perfectly dressed staff, marble floors polished endlessly, champagne displays, private shopping rooms. But underneath that polished surface, confidence is collapsing. Internal reports during early 2026 painted a grim picture. Revenue across several flagship luxury stores reportedly dropped between 30 and 70%, depending on category and location. And that number reveals something terrifying. Because luxury survives almost entirely on psychology. When wealthy customers feel optimistic, they spend aggressively. When uncertainty appears, they disappear almost instantly. And Dubai's greatest strength was always emotional certainty. The belief that this city represented permanent prosperity, a tax-free paradise, a safe oasis, a place where global elites gathered far from instability. But by 2026, that image began weakening rapidly. High net worth individuals are among the most risk-sensitive people in the world. And once geopolitical instability intensified across the Gulf region, many wealthy individuals quietly shifted behavior. Some redirected spending, others moved capital entirely. Cities like Singapore and Zurich suddenly appeared far more attractive than glamorous shopping districts surrounded by regional uncertainty. Because in unstable environments, conspicuous consumption becomes uncomfortable. A Dior handbag no longer feels exciting during geopolitical tension. A luxury watch no longer signals success if people begin prioritizing security and discretion instead. The psychology of luxury changes completely, and this creates a devastating problem for companies like LVMH, because these businesses invested hundreds of millions into physical experiences designed around emotional aspiration. Massive boutiques, private lounges, architectural flagship stores. But those environments become financial burdens when customers stop showing up physically. Even worse, Dubai was supposed to compensate for slowing luxury demand elsewhere. China weakened, Europe slowed. The Middle East became the backup growth engine, but now even that engine is sputtering. And perhaps that exposes the deepest weakness of Dubai's economic model itself. Overconcentration, too much dependence on luxury retail, too much dependence on tourism, too much dependence on global confidence continuing forever. The city built an extraordinary machine powered almost entirely by perception. Perception of safety, perception of wealth, perception of endless opportunity. But perception is fragile, and once it cracks, everything beneath it begins shaking. That is why these store closures matter so much. West Elm, Pottery Barn, Debenhams, River Island, Gucci, Balenciaga, Apple, H&M. These are not isolated retail failures. They are symptoms of a larger transformation happening quietly underneath Dubai's polished image. The end of an era built entirely around limitless expansion and extravagant consumption. And perhaps the most painful part is this: Dubai itself may already understand that change is unavoidable, because after 2026, the city appears increasingly forced to evolve away from pure luxury spectacle towards something more sustainable, more pragmatic, less dependent on emotional excess. And that transition will not be easy. For decades, Dubai sold a dream to the world, the dream that growth could continue forever, that bigger malls, taller towers, and more luxury brands would permanently attract global money. But history repeatedly shows the same lesson. No economic model expands infinitely. Eventually, saturation arrives. Consumer behavior changes. New generations prioritize different values. And systems built entirely on spectacle begin struggling to adapt. That may be exactly what is happening now. Gen Z and younger affluent consumers increasingly value authenticity over overt luxury, wellness over extravagance, flexibility over ownership, digital convenience over giant shopping malls. And Dubai's old retail empire was designed for a completely different psychological era. An era obsessed with visible wealth, gigantic malls, designer logos, public displays of success. But that emotional energy is weakening globally. And once desire weakens, luxury infrastructure becomes incredibly difficult to sustain profitably, because enormous malls require enormous spending to survive. Massive air conditioning systems, security operations, luxury maintenance, premium staffing, everything depends on constant customer flow. And when that flow slows down, the economics become dangerous very quickly. Dubai will absolutely survive. The city is too strategic, too connected, and too ambitious to disappear. But the version of Dubai that emerges after this period may look fundamentally different from the one the world once admired. Less fantasy, more realism, less excess, more caution. And perhaps that is the true meaning behind these ghost stores quietly spreading across luxury malls. Not the death of Dubai, but the death of an illusion. Because every empire built on spectacle eventually faces the same terrifying question. What happens when the audience stops believing in the show?